Hi, and welcome back again to another episode of Words with Al. I went over again my presentation, and whilst I was doing that, I began realizing some other things that I have missed. Um, I will try to explain this again. This won't be like a big redo. It's not really a big redo at all. It's just that this whole development is pretty much replicated across our stages of development, one can say. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that that means that um, we can see the development of man and woman through their developmental stages. So as a baby, toddler, growing up, becoming a kid, child, and then becoming a teenager, and then an adolescent, and then a young adult, and then an adult, and then in his prime, and then in his late senior years. Right. So it's a curve. It's a curve of maturity, of experience. Right. But it is also replicating the development of how we began. Right, because we don't speak as babies, and then we learn. We cried in the beginning, and then we learn to be silent, or learn. That is our default state. Stillness is our default state after coming into existence. And then we hear it from these adults. We hear them speak, and we hear them making sounds, and we find that very funny, just just like babies still do. But in the beginning, that was very strange when we heard someone speak for the first time. Speech was very scary in the beginning because it was unnatural. It was very artificial. It still is, in a sense. Um, it's not artificial in that sense, but it was artificial because it has never been done in the animal kingdom before. Life had never strayed away, had never learned another way of being besides the one that every other life form was also undergoing or, following, which was the stream of life. The stream instead of thoughts. Instead of the stream of thoughts, it would just be the stream of life, of energy, of stillness coming and going. But that was how that went. And then, so this is my new theory now. Well, it's not a new theory, but I need to tweak it a little bit. Because what I'm discovering is that, especially if you look at these development of faiths, of religions, and you go through them all, you quickly realize that all of them almost, if you do like a discourse analysis on our development using language itself, so you just use a psychological tool. Okay, in psychology, we yeah, I have a background in psychology. In psychology, we can conduct research in some ways, and the only ways that we can truly is either through an experiment or through a discourse of language, to look at what language is, what world it is creating. And from there on, we can see what worlds were created or the context that those people were living in that time when they wrote the things that they did. Okay. So this is not me analyzing things from nowhere, but this is pretty much me using a tool that exists in academia today, that enables us to analyze language itself. We have both qualitative research methods, but also quantitative. So we can do two types of research here to see the development of the psyche, because that is really what we are looking at. We're looking at the development of prefrontal cortex, of language itself, of thought processes, of a mind. Okay, so that is what we're looking at. Now, this whole study is pretty much, we're looking at it in reverse, but we're looking at it through a psychological lens. because that is what has happened. We can't look at history only through history because that is just the action. To understand the context, we kind of like have to go inside the mind of those people in that time and see what kind of world they were living in. And that world was dictated by the words they used and those ideas that they knew, because those ideas were the only things that they knew. So they based their entire choices and decisions and everything, their whole life, on those ideas, because that is what they knew. Yeah. Okay. And these were always like transferred generational to generation. They were always transferred. And then that is how it went. Uh, but this is the interesting thing, because we can always use the micro, we can always use the example of today to look at what happened back then, because it is still happening. This development is still happening today. Not every people or group of people or faction are have been included in civilization, or this Western civilization that we're now kind of all are becoming a part of through this globalization and social media. Because now every person on earth knows what YouTube is. This just wasn't the case just a few years back, but now it is. And it's not only like YouTube is becoming the channel of the world, so of the people. So now suddenly the whole globe is meeting in this platform and sharing their ideas and their knowledge. And now this knowledge is pretty much coming back to us. So we're seeing something that has never been seen in mankind's history, and that is this accumulation now, or what has been accumulated throughout different types of people is now has reached now the internet, which is then distributing this knowledge throughout the globe, making us more connected than what we've ever been. Okay, so we've been very disconnected through language, through religion, through culture, through very many things for thousands of years now. Okay, we have to go very far back till we were not so disconnected as we are now. But now, in these new times, for the first time, everyone is seeing the same videos online. Everybody's looking at the same reels, the same TikToks, the same Facebooks, the same news, pretty much more or less, because it's all really coming together now. Times, the past, the future, and the present are kind of like meeting in this web of internet that we've made, this replica of our mind. That is what it is. It's a replica of our mind, right? The internet is like, if you put anything in it, it will stick there forever, right? That is what the psyche is too. It's just a replica of the psyche, of the processing that we need. Remember that memory is also processing power, right? So the more memory you have, the more you can process thoughts and ideas. That's why we needed a psyche. This ties back to that. We needed many life forms and many life experiences to build this field of potentiality where thoughts can arise. Okay, the psyche. So the internet was already made biologically, you can say. The internet exists biologically inside of us all. Yeah, it does. And it is this sensory perception and goosebumps and the sense of sense and stillness itself. Stillness itself is our connection to everything, to the Wi Fi of life, to the pulse of creation. Okay. Okay. So, so now I have this new idea, because what I'm seeing is that quite a different type of approach now suddenly, because what we're seeing is, I'm just going to find a map of the globe. Honestly, yeah, just keep it simple. Okay, but rather map of the Mediterranean. We can have to look. We can look at the globe as well. Like, we can do that. Maybe this was not so very detailed. Yeah, this one looks a bit better. Bigger one. Yeah. Okay. All right. So what do we have here? We have here, we are seeing now, okay, I can't move this. I can, maybe I should just go to Google Globe. Yeah, maybe just do that. Okay, Google Earth, that's what it's called. Okay. I'm not getting old. I'm just not so updated as I used to be. Mm, that's how it is to get when you get in your 30s. Okay, what's happening here? Can I just look at Earth? Yes, please. Okay. So what happened here? Now we're going to go to Egypt, but we are also going to go a bit further back because what we need to remember is that North Africa or Central Africa, that is pretty much where we began, or maybe even further down in the south, and then we just went north, 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 north. You know, uh, we don't know that. We really don't know where we began on Earth, but at least civilization began here. Okay, and perhaps even on the other places here before it became a desert. We don't know that now because obviously it is a desert. And maybe be underneath all this sand, we can find ruins of other cities that we have made before, which probably were the leading cause of this desert. Because maybe there was no desert before, right? What if there was no desert once upon a time? What if we are the sole cause of the desert? We don't know that. We don't know that. We don't know that. Okay. But that might be also, but also we have, obviously we have other environmental changes that Earth goes through as well. We can't escape that. We know that 13,000 years ago approximately, a a solar flare almost destroyed us. Okay, that is when we hear the flood that almost killed us, and it almost did because very many people died. It is a story that is stuck in the psyche of mankind. So it is a story that a lot of groups of people, different type of people, remember because it went generationally. It was told. It left a big impact on those people. So it happened. It's just very old now. It's just so long time ago. So it just became myth, and then just became a story, and then just became a tale, and then just became fantasy, and then right. That's how it goes, and that's how it got. Then it became religion, right? So all these things are just, this is just time. Time is messing with us. Time has been messing with us for a long time. It seems. Okay, because the further time in, the deeper in time we go, the worse it gets. It seems, because, well, that's not entirely true, but it is. Okay. So my new theory is that we spread to that point. Um, my new theory goes really back to now, uh, to that. Well, let me just bring it back. No. Okay. Uh, okay, guys. So yeah, I need to find the old one, the first one. So what I discovered is, okay. Now, okay, this is a bit difficult for me to explain, but what I discovered is that what if uh, not everything was realized everywhere? Remember when I said that the Hebrew people made God, or the idea of God? Just go back. Let me go back there. Yes. So I said that it began with the star. I said that the Albanian that it began with us worshiping the stars, but not really. So apparently I was wrong. The Akkadian word is the oldest word, as we know. And what I realized is that, okay, this is what happened now with language and why it is very strange, because now it is turning a bit my theory around. Um, so, okay, look at it this way. So civilization rise and they learn new words. These words would then travel like rumors, and then they will get as far as they could. Okay, and then back then in the old days, apparently we were much more connected than what we are today, because we met each other. Although even though people moved, we relied solely on each other to survive. And to because we started agriculture. When we started agriculture, we needed a lot of land, so we just took a lot of land, and then the next family and the next brother and then the next cousin and the next one, uncle, and then these would just spread and spread and spread, taking a lot of land. That's how our we managed to or settle earth or populate earth before we even learned to speak, because we didn't need to speak, right? We didn't need to speak to teach someone that things grow. I could just show you how you plant seeds and then wait with you next year, because a year was nothing for the people, right? Back then, because they didn't really have much other things to do. So so I would teach you, like within a year, I would teach you everything about agriculture, and then you would do it. We don't need to talk. I would just show you, always demonstrate using my body and the action itself. I would demonstrate to you. I will show you, like, remove the earth, put in the seeds, plow the thingy bobs, and all the manual work that goes with it. I would teach it to you, and then that will just spread and spread and spread and spread and spread and getting quite far. We're suddenly getting quite fast, very far away from each other, although we spoke the same language, right? And that is how this. And then those who were quite far away now, because civilization always happened in Middle East. It wasn't happening somewhere else. It did happen somewhere else too, but much later. The Middle East were the first place, the first North Africa, where our first civilization, our first big one, where we also learned agriculture and everything else. There we learned everything. And later on, speech would come later, much later. Yeah. So once this speech, these ideas, these words were made, they were spread. So Ilu, the Akkadian Ilu is old, super old, right? One of the first known words that we know of, and the meaning here says God. That is our science today, but it's not God. It's actually all. So the Norwegians, the Scandinavians, the one who moved the furthest away, the Icelandic people, the ones who went really far, they kept the old meanings, because now they were just farmers far off, far away from Middle East, where civilization was really happening and all these new developments and knowledge and science was occurring and spreading, and this knowledge and these new social structures and competitions and kings and elites and slaves. This wasn't happening up in the north, up in Russia, up in Siberia, in China. These things did not happen there because they were just working the soil. They were producing stuff. They had animals. They were families. They just spread the knowledge. They made tools. They made, tools, kitchen tools, working tools, knife, weapons to defend themselves, to hunt, etc., and so on. But they didn't have a civilization. There was no theater happening in China. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously, it was much later when China became a civilization. because China did also become a civilization and very early on, right? But why did China have this chi sound? This is very right. It gets well. I'm not going to go there yet because we need to finish this one. So, so the first knowledge was not specific, right? Specificity grew with time. That is how we got a fully formed language. Specificity took time. English today is one of the most specific languages and the most developed ones, because it is able to encapsulate a new idea and make it conveyable, to other people, transferable to other people, and much faster than the Chinese one. And the reason for that now is because, or the Mandarin one, is because the psyche, the Western psyche, has now infested all of Earth, Africa, South America, Central America, China, Asia, you name it, Russia, even Russia. All of us are now Westernized. We all look at YouTube, right? We all know now the same things: Facebook, Instagram. We all know iPhone. We all know Samsung. We all know Tesla. We all know Mercedes. We all know Fords. But this was not the case just like 20, 30, 40 years ago. Much of the world was still in agriculture and was still outside the technological development. But this technological development is speeding up the process now. Now we're suddenly all being globalized and being part of this one type of personality that man and woman is becoming. Okay. Yeah. So this is what happened. So the first words, the first sounds, the first ideas were general. So ilu could not have meant God because God came with the Hebrew. Okay. So the idea of God as a judge, yes, a divine creator judge, because there was a God, well, it was all. And the reason why the Germanic all is the more correct one is because that word, that sound spread during that time when that was realized, but the civilization in Middle East kept going because they were refining these ideas because they were reflecting on them. Teaching, learning, reflecting, dividing, subtracting. They were doing many things, right? They were talking about it, talking, reflect, philosophize. And then that would give them more ideas. Suddenly, from all, they could realize, oh, but maybe there is an intelligence behind existence because we are intelligent. They must have concluded that God must exist or intelligence must exist because we are intelligence, right? So they made God. But they also included the whole judge thingy bob and hell. But if this was introduced like in the beginning, probably not. This was probably introduced with the elites that came later, with the Jewish elites. Because remember that before the Abrahamic religions, we had the Greek and the Latin gods, Jupiter and Venus and Zeus and Hades and Poseidon, right? We had many gods, but these were not really gods. These were people. All of these back. If you go further back in time, these were like ancestors. Yeah, they were just perceived as God because they became myth and legend and stuff. And during that time, our psyche was developing, so our imagination was developing, and our knowledge of existence was developing because we didn't know everything that existed, so we believed in. We were afraid of things, right? We were afraid of the dark. We were afraid of magic. We were very superstitious. And then in the Albanian time, or during the Albanian era, we see that this increase in mythical beings come into vocabulary, into the mind. So we start like Zana, Thana. We have many these new words, these new ideas occurring, which pertain to mythical beings like dragons. We hear dragons in the Albanian language that we do not in the other ones, European ones, like early on. We heard about Kraken. We hear about Cyclops. We hear about Medusa, Gorgon, very many mythical beings. right? Hercules, Hercules. So the metal, the born of metal one, right? So all these people were like people. These gods, I mean, sorry, they were people. Further back in time we go, but then the Latin ones and the other ones, obviously, that would then become the planets, right? Venus, Jupiter, they were the planets because our knowledge grew. And what happened with our knowledge? Our knowledge grew because, so look at this, right? Right, where is it now? Uh, yes. Okay. So if you see here and you look at this map, you will find very fast. You will see my whole explanation here because in terms of the last video, Theos or Zoti, Theos and Dios, they all represent different stages of our development. In the beginning, we realize sound, so speech, which is why we created Zoti. And we call ourselves Zotri as Zoya. So man is a new god and woman is a new god. Because remember that back before the Abrahamic religions, we were gods. We were not slaves, we were gods in creation. We were the child of God, right? That is what we how we saw it, which is why we called ourselves young gods. In the Albanian language, if you search for Mr. and Mrs., they mean young gods or new gods. New god, Zotri. Zotri, 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 Zotri. The Zoya, Zoe. Zoya is for the female, and Zotiri, is for the male. So male is, yeah, even our language decided that male is closer to God, and she is his, he is the source and she is the stream. Together they create the sun. Yeah, and space, which is why Kron, well, see, in the old ancient, in the ancient mythology, we see that Krone, father, is the spring, in fact, which makes sense because even his penis and ejaculation and everything, it's a spring. We are a spring. We men, we are springs, shooting out stuff. And she is Rhea. She's what's coming out of us, kind of. But we love her, right? But that is the knowledge back then. This is not the truth. Okay, this is just the knowledge back then. And then it moved to Theos, which we see then the Greek culture becoming quite big because they learned to speak. And it becomes much clearer. They develop this language very much. They have a lot of history, which is why we look at the Greek history today as representing European history because they do. They represent a big part of it. But they're not the only ones. Everyone represents a part of it. Everyone represents a time and a region because not all development happened same everywhere. Everyone did not get the word, which is why we get these other explanations where the first semantics was spread the furthest, and then the newest ones were spread less and less because competition began arising. So knowledge was now not spread, and if it was, it wasn't for the right reasons. It was because of, well, that's how they understood things now. It was the knowledge that was developing. Okay, it was knowledge that was developing, so it wasn't for wrong reasons. It's not like the Jewish people meant to create the idea of God as a judge to control you. I don't. That's not how it started. That is how they viewed it. They realized that we are intelligence, so we must come from intelligence. So it must be a God. Yeah. So it was a Jew. A Jude realized God. So he came and like, oh, so we're now Judes. We're all with Jude. We're all with God. We're now men of God, men or women of Jude, of God. Okay. That is what we are. And then that became later Christianized. Christian. Jesus came. Then suddenly we're now all Christian. Okay. And then came Muhammad. Now we're all suddenly Muhammads. Yeah. So all these people, right? These prophets came with big realizations for the people during those times. But this knowledge did not spread to China. This knowledge did not spread to other places. So what happened then? Why didn't it? Because now this civilization game, this whole selfishness had reached its peaks, so that knowledge was not being spread as easily, and people realized that knowledge can control people. We can start. I can teach you something, and thus I kind of like control you because I know now what you will act upon, what will be the basis from which you will act. Then I can manipulate you. Right? So this civilization game, this scheme, this cunningness became worse and worse and worse the more the civilization grew. So, in fact, the ones who have been less affected by civilization are much closer to the root, are much closer to nature, both literally, but also in their mind and emotions and sensory. They haven't deviated so much into this artificial world that they have forgotten their roots. So yes, so chi went quite far, quite early. Okay, that is why we see this chi sound in Asia, but they didn't get these other words because these other words, and you can see the Chinese language itself, Mandarin, has a lot of ch and z, 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 z. So they decided language completely different. They decided a total different. They made a different in language rules. So different types of grammar and rules, right? Where they decided the length of the vowel to decide things instead of making new words, which happened in Middle East and in Western in Europe. They rather just use that one sound and then spread it. I mean, they also had their own development. Everyone did. But this is the point. The point is that the Chinese did not get the religion part. They did not get God, which is why their civilization built completely different. These values on the ground would be the foundation through which these civilizations would grow. So that's why they're not affected of that. They don't have like 2,000 years of experience of hell or the thought of the fear of hell inside their bodies, like men in Europe do, and the United States because they took the religion with them, and started even infecting the native people there. So, sorry, I don't mean to be blunt and rude and stuff. That's not my purpose here. I'm just we're just going through discourse analysis of life. But this is where it is getting us now. So now we're suddenly there are words occurring and ideas spreading, and then these ideas will stop and not spread that easily anymore, and then they would be confined to specific civilizations where this development would occur faster, which is also explains why the Western world populated or conquered the rest of the globe, because this scheme of selfishness, this greed, this wanting to own you, to own everything, to own all the land, all the water, all the resources, to have all the money, to own the people, to own all of you, has not stopped. It began in Middle East, exactly in Middle East, where it is still occurring right now, where the chaos and war is occurring as we speak. So that is where this selfishness began. It began in Egypt, it began in Middle East, and it spread in Europe. And this infection spread from Europe and spread across all of Earth. And now we're all infected with this idea, this selfishness, this lack of natural beauty, of divine beauty, of beauty that comes from God, from light, from life. We're devoid of it because we're with ourself, with our own mind. And our mind cannot illuminate anything because our mind is thoughts, not light. light is of the stillness, not of thought. So there you go. Now this selfishness idea has spread, and it has affected everyone. But thankfully, or hopefully, or maybe China and the rest of the world can save us, because we don't want now this selfishness anymore. We want Earth to be a team. We want the good for all, because it is within our means. We can achieve everything together, because we are all truly the only gods here. We are the children of existence, of creation, of life. So whatever God is able to create, we are also able to create it with time. Okay? Together, not alone, together. And with love, because only love creates. Thank you for today. Thank you for listening. Have a good day or good evening wherever you are. Thank you.